Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited because as the weeks of the summer are passing by, we're getting closer and closer to the start of the school year. And for me, that means new opportunities to positively impact the lives of our students, which is why I'm in education. I think most of you are in education for the same reason. So today, I'd like to talk about one of the ways in which we do that, which is through our academic programs and specifically through the grouping of students. So, one of our jobs as administrators and teachers is to place students into courses where they're challenged. And most of our school philosophies or belief statements say that we have high expectations for all students. But I'll challenge you and ask you, does your course setup, does your course placement of students really reflect that you have high expectations for your students? For example, do you have high, medium, and low groups of the same course in your school? Do you have, for example, sixth grade math or fourth grade math, and you have a high group, a medium group, and a low group? And you may call them many different things to try to mask what they really are, but traditionally they've been called things like ability groups or tracks. And my problem with that approach is that by default, we're setting low expectations. Once you put students in a lower group, we are lowering expectations. Not to mention, I believe it's more challenging for a teacher to teach and support an entire class full of traditionally lower performing students all at once. So I want to talk a little bit about our approach to placement of students and what I believe is the most effective approach to make sure we have high expectations for all students, but also that we have supports and strategies in place to make sure we're successful. So, in the past, schools have used things like ability groups to place students, and they may rely on past data such as standardized test performance, classroom grades, teacher recommendation, and other things such as that to say this student belongs in this group. And they may wind up in a low group, a medium group, and a high group. And I think once a student's placed with that label, it immediately communicates to a teacher that this is their ceiling, this is their level of achievement, ability, again, which I feel like is really tough to say. I really don't know what a student's ability is. I know what their past performance is. And a lot of times, past performance is a good predictor of future performance. But also, many of us have had students in our classes that have just, for many factors or many reasons, has just bloomed one year. And we never want to do anything sort of structurally that inhibits or gets in the way of that. Students mature, grow, and learn at different rates. So when we have students that may be ready to really blossom, we want to make sure that we have things in place to allow them to do that. And when we have tracks or levels, such as a low group, what we find in the research is that it is very rare for students to ever move out of that track or level. In addition, what we find is there's a disproportionate amount of students of low socioeconomic status, minority students, and traditionally underserved students placed in those lower tracks. And just having that knowledge is enough to tell us that's an equity issue, that there's something wrong there, and we need to really examine our practices. So, what I believe is important is that we offer the same quality Tier 1 curriculum and instruction to all students. And what that means is that we have heterogeneous groups of students placed together, and then we really support teachers in their ability to differentiate instruction, provide support, and then provide intervention and remediation when appropriate and when necessary. So, one of the ways we do that in our school is through a co teaching model and through classes that may have remedial assistant support or instructional support, which allows teachers to really flexible group within their classroom. So there are times when we do need to separate students into small groups based on their performance in a class, their current level of skill attainment, or what they're showing us in the classroom. And so what that does require is sort of a breakdown of the traditional teacher-led discussion for the entire class. Of course, direct instruction is still a very effective method, but that doesn't mean a teacher should be up in front of a classroom all day. I think we all can agree to that at this point in education philosophically. But there are times when a teacher is going to give a mini lesson to the entire class, but then possibly break students out into groups or individually, to provide more small group instruction, individual support within the classroom. So when we place students in heterogeneous groups, it's really sort of predicated on the idea that we are not going to follow the same one size fits all teacher-led instruction for a 40, 60, 90-minute period. That we are going to utilize flexible groups within a heterogeneous classroom to make sure all students are successful. And a lot of times what we find is that within those groups that may need more attention, we have different students at different times. So if traditionally we would have placed students in a low group, they're sort of in that low group for the entire year or in that track for the entire year. When there may be certain types of skills throughout the year that those students learn really quickly, that they pick up on and they're ready to receive enrichment on, but they wouldn't be provided that opportunity in the traditional classroom. So again, by utilizing things like co-teaching, instructional aids and supports, and then intervention and remediation, I think that enables us to heterogeneously group our students with success. Again, this is not easy. It's a major challenge for many of us. I would say too many schools have jumped right from what they maybe have done in the past, ability grouping, to no tracks or no ability grouping at all, but didn't do the legwork necessary to prepare teachers and even students for that change. So again, we're communicating that we have high expectations for our students by placing all students into challenging coursework. That means we don't have a medium, high, and low level of student. That if we have a sixth grade math course, it's a sixth grade math course. That means we have students of all past performance levels placed in that course. And basically what we do is utilize the data that's gathered through the formative assessment process to reteach, remediate when necessary for specific students and specific groups of students. So ideally, that's how this type of classroom would work, that teachers use data. They use what I refer to as a formative assessment cycle, which means that we have clear objectives, we have quality instruction, we check for understanding, and then most importantly, there is feedback and follow-up to the data we collect when we check for understanding. And that entire process makes up what is formative assessment. A lot of people think it's just checking for understanding when it's not. That's just one step in the process. We need to complete the process by providing either remediation or enrichment after we have the data from checking for understanding, and then follow up to that. So we provide feedback and then have follow up, which may include those type of activities for enrichment, remediation, or intervention. So what this also means is we don't have pull-out classes in our classrooms, meaning we don't pull students out from math and provide a tier 2 type of math instruction instead of a tier 1 instruction. We believe all students should be exposed and have access to a quality tier 1 curriculum and instruction, and then within that curriculum have supports and enrichment, and then if necessary, we employ our tier 2 and tier 3 interventions to help them be successful. But again, it starts at the top with high expectations for all students, and we communicate this through the way we place students into heterogeneous groups, and then we employ strategies such as formative assessment to make sure they can be successful in those classes. And then, and only then, do we utilize tier 2 and tier 3 interventions to close any gaps that exist. Too often, schools will place students directly into a tier 2 or tier 3 intervention, and sometimes they take away tier 1 instruction. And that's a problem. Those interventions cannot be in lieu of tier 1. They have to be in addition to our tier 1 instruction. And that's essential for the success of any academic support program. So again, to recap, I think heterogeneous grouping of students communicates that we do have high expectations for all our students. It's important that we prepare our teachers and our students with the strategies and ability and supports to be successful in those placements and that design. And then also we utilize our tier 2 and tier 3 instruction after the tier 1 is implemented and students are identified that need additional support and remediation. So that is what I believe combined together can create a really quality education for all our students. Again, thank you for joining me today. I'd love to talk more about this with you. If you have any questions about how our school has employed this strategy or this approach to placement of students, how we utilize our staff in the most effective manner to really show that we have high expectations for students, call them to those high expectations, and then support them in getting there. Thanks again for joining me, and have a great day.
Yeah.